this is a simple exercise designed to develop your ability to judge value accurately, independent of colour. It's a fairly simple exercise, as most of the most powerful exercises are. All I have here is a palette knife, obviously a palette. This is a neutral grey plexiglass palette. It's much better for doing colour exercises and for mixing on than the standard red wood palette, because obviously a red wood palette has chroma and hue, which you want to avoid because it makes it more difficult to judge the colours. I have a small piece of paper here, neutral grey, about a mid-value grey, with a small hole cut in it. And this is probably the most useful tool that I own in terms of my development in my ability to handle colour, because it allows you to isolate a colour from its surroundings, and that's an incredibly useful thing. Here I have a small piece of acetate strip. This is just a little section cut off a standard office supplies type OHP slide. 3 oil colours here. I've got titanium white, burnt umber and ivory black. You could do this just with ivory black and titanium white. I've added burnt umber for a special reason, which I'll show towards the end. And what I have here are 2 pieces of paper, which I'm going to attempt to match the values of. So I'm just going to match the local values of these 2 as closely as I can. Now, something which is worth noting about both of these is that the chroma is very low. The chroma of these colours is very low. By that I mean that the intensity of the colour is very low. They're quite close to grey, and I recommend, if you have trouble with value, with judging value, that you start off by judging low chroma colours first and then move on to high chroma colours once you've got good at those, because it's much more difficult to separate chroma and value in high chroma colours. So try with something fairly simple like this first. I'll start with the lighter one. And it really is as simple as just getting as close as you can to this target value. So the first thing you do is to estimate it. It's a good idea to wipe off your palette knife between each. Sorry, I don't want that one ivory black. To wipe off your palette knife between each picking up of a colour. Now this one is fairly light, so I'm probably not, this value here is fairly light, so I'm probably not going to need too much ivory black. And I'll just try and I'm not going to try too hard because I want to show you how you can correct and get gradually closer and closer. And the point of this exercise is not just to get close, it's to nail this value as closely as you possibly can. So here I've got a value mixed up. Now I know already that that value is too dark, but let me show you how you can see for sure. Just take your palette knife, dab a little of the value onto your piece of card, or whatever it is you're using, acetate in this case. It's important that this is smooth, though, and doesn't have a texture, because a texture would affect your perception of the value. Pick it up and isolate an area of the colour you're trying to match, and then hold this over it, and you can then squint, and you can see, hopefully, fairly clearly, that the colour that I've mixed is just a little bit darker than the colour I'm trying to match, the value I'm trying to match. So we'll just add a little more white. Wipe this one off so it's clean. Put a little bit of the new colour on it. Now go right up to the edge try and put it on smoothly with the palette knife, so there's not too many ridges, so it's easy to see the value. And as before, just hold it over so you can see a little bit of the value you're trying to match underneath. Squint your eyes a little. I think it's still a little bit too dark, so I'll wipe this off again. Put in a little bit more white. If your mix is too dark, it generally takes a lot more white to bring the value up. So what you could do, if you find yourself in this situation and you're struggling to bring it up quickly enough, is to take some of it out and then add some white. You can do it that way too. And it can actually be good practice to bracket it. If you have trouble matching like this, you can mix one value which is definitely lighter and one which is definitely darker, and then mix between the two, mix a little of one into the other until you actually get it exactly right. Or you can just go for it straight away like this, like I am. Again, I'm squinting a little. I think at this point I'm very close. It looks like pretty much the right value. Maybe just a little shade too dark still, so I'll try just bringing up a little bit. The last little corrections, when you really stretch your ability to compare the values, is where I think a lot of the development of this skill comes. And you may ask, well, what's the point in doing this? Why should I bother? This isn't how I paint. When I'm trying to paint something in the real world, I have to look at colours all together and I have to judge them. Well, you can still use an isolator to judge colours in the same way with a three-dimensional scene. And this core skill of judging value is something that you will develop. Your brain muscles, if you like, that you use to compare and judge value will get developed this way, so that then when you come to paint, you'll have a much easier time judging the values. And I think I've got that one about right at that point. So I'm going to mix another one the same value, but this time I'm going to use white and a little bit of burnt umber. And I'll bring that to the same value. Now this is a good thing to do, I think, for two reasons. One, because this is a low chroma paint, burnt umber, but you're dealing with colour now at the same time. So again, you're starting to stretch yourself a little by judging value with a little bit of chroma as well, without making it too difficult. Judge it in exactly the same way as we did before. And just keep going until you think you've got it exactly right. I think that's close. And the other useful thing that you can do with this is obviously slightly, it has some colour, and the hue of this, which means by hue I mean what is it? Red, yellow, blue. This is orange. Burnt umber is like a low value, low chroma orange. So this is really on the orange end of things. Now this, although it looks grey, and you may think it's grey and neutral, it's not neutral, it's slightly blue because it's ivory black. So if you take a little more of the ivory black and a small amount of the burnt umber and you mix them together, then you will be able to get something which is much closer to a true neutral. So it's useful to have both of them for that reason, because you can then mix up a scale. If you're lucky enough to have the Munsell book or a Munsell scale, you can mix up a really accurate neutral value scale that way, just by doing this. And also do it with a darker value. So try it with a few different values. You can see this is slightly darker than the value of the isolator, which is a neutral, so you can judge that as well. And it doesn't take very long to do this. Once you have the equipment together that you need, the bits of kit that you need to do it, it only takes a matter of a few minutes. So if you set yourself to do this little exercise every time when you sit down at the easel to paint, you'll find before too long that your ability to judge value becomes much more developed. And over a longer period of time, if you do it regularly, it will really help you to develop that core skill of accurate judging of value.